Social Security looks boring until the check is late, the rent is due, the grocery receipt feels wrong, and somebody you love realizes retirement was built on a promise they cannot live without. This is not a video about panic. It is a video about math, politics, aging, and the quiet squeeze hiding in plain sight. By the end, you will understand why the system is not bankrupt, why that still does not make it safe, and why the hardest choices keep getting delayed while ordinary Americans plan their lives around money they were told would be there. The real tension is that every household hears the promise differently, but the deadline is the same for everyone. Here is the uncomfortable part. Almost everyone says Social Security matters, but almost nobody wants to say out loud what it would take to protect it. Retirees want security, workers want fairness, politicians want applause. Nobody wants the bill. The result is a national argument full of fog. Some people say the program is going broke. Others say nothing is wrong. Both lines are too simple. The real problem is more frustrating because it is slow, measurable, and completely predictable. Social Security is not a vault with your personal name on a drawer. It is mostly a pay-as-you-go system, where today's workers help fund today's retirees, disabled workers, survivors, spouses, and children. That design works when the balance is healthy. But the balance has been shifting. Americans are living longer than the program was originally built around, birth rates are lower than they used to be, and a large generation has moved from paying into the system to drawing from it. That does not mean the checks suddenly vanish. It means the program's dedicated revenue is not enough to pay every scheduled benefit forever under current law. That phrase sounds dry, but it is the center of the whole fight. The latest trustees' projection says the combined Social Security trust funds can pay scheduled benefits until 2034. After that, incoming revenue would still cover most benefits, but not all of them. That is close enough to affect people already making retirement decisions, not just babies or distant future workers. The retirement fund by itself is under more pressure. Its reserves are projected to run out in the fourth quarter of 2032, with enough income at that point to pay only part of scheduled retirement and survivor benefits. That is the problem nobody wants to talk about clearly. Not collapse, not comfort. A forced cut under current law if Congress waits too long. And because Social Security touches so many households, even a partial cut would feel enormous. Think about a retired worker whose budget is already built down to the penny. The electric bill is not theoretical. The prescription refill is not theoretical. The rent increase is not theoretical. A smaller check is not a spreadsheet event. Social Security paid benefits to roughly 70 million people at the end of 2025. That includes retired workers, disabled workers, survivors, spouses, and families who may not have much else to fall back on. At the same time, about 185 million workers had earnings covered by Social Security and paid payroll taxes. This is not some small side program. It is one of the biggest financial relationships in American life. And yet the debate often sounds like a shouting match between people who want to scare you and people who want you to stop asking questions. The truth sits in the middle, and the truth is sharp. Social Security has money coming in every year. Payroll taxes continue. Taxes on some benefits continue. Interest on reserves has mattered while reserves exist. But costs have risen above income, and that gap drains the reserves. In 2025, the combined trust funds took in less than they paid out. That is not a rumor. It is the pattern that matters. Once annual costs stay above annual income, the trust fund becomes a cushion being used up. A cushion is useful. It is not permanent. And when a cushion gets thinner year after year, the question becomes simple. Do leaders refill it gradually, or do they let it flatten until everyone feels the floor? The political incentive is obvious. Fixing Social Security requires telling somebody something they do not want to hear. Workers may pay more. Higher earners may pay more. Future retirees may get less than scheduled. Benefits may change. Every option creates a headline. Every headline creates a campaign ad. So the easiest move is delay. Delay looks calm. Delay avoids blame. Delay lets the next election happen before the hard vote. But delay is not neutral. Delay is a policy choice. The longer lawmakers wait, the less time workers and retirees have to adjust, and the more abrupt the eventual changes may become. That is why the phrase "nobody wants to talk about" matters. The problem is not that no one knows the numbers. The problem is that everyone knows enough to be nervous, but not enough people want to own the trade-offs. To understand the trade-offs, start with the payroll tax. Workers and employers each pay a Social Security tax on wages up to an annual taxable maximum. Self-employed workers pay both sides because they are both worker and employer. In 2026, the Social Security taxable maximum is $184,500. Earnings above that amount are not taxed for Social Security, though Medicare taxes continue without that same cap. It sounds like a small payroll detail until you realize it decides which dollars are counted and which dollars are not. That cap is where many arguments begin. A worker making less than the cap pays Social Security tax on all covered wages. A worker making far above the cap stops paying the Social Security portion once wages cross the limit. Some people see that as unfair. Others point out that benefits are also tied to taxed earnings. So, removing the cap without changing benefits is not just a technical tweak. It changes the structure of the system. This is where simple slogans break down. Raise the cap, and you raise more revenue. But how much credit should high earners receive in future benefits? Should the tax rise but benefits not rise as much? That is a real policy choice. Then there is the benefit formula. Social Security is progressive, meaning it replaces a larger share of past earnings for lower wage workers than for higher wage workers. That is one reason it reduces poverty among older Americans. The formula looks back at up to 35 years of indexed earnings. If someone had years out of the workforce, low pay, layoffs, caregiving, illness, or unstable work, those years can matter in the final benefit. This is why Social Security is not just an old age program. It reflects the whole working life. Low wages do not only hurt when someone is young. They can echo decades later in a smaller retirement check. Now add the claiming age. You can start retirement benefits as early as age 62, but taking benefits early permanently reduces the monthly amount compared with waiting until full retirement age. For people born in 1960 or later, full retirement age is 67. Waiting beyond full retirement age can raise the monthly benefit until age 70, after which delaying no longer increases the benefit. That is the part that rarely fits into campaign language. Social Security is both a moral promise and a cash flow system, and both sides have to be respected at the same time. On paper, waiting can look smart. In real life, waiting can be a luxury. People claim early because their bodies hurt, their jobs disappear, their savings are gone, or they are helping families survive. So when someone says, just raise the retirement age, listen carefully. That may sound clean in a policy room, but it can hit workers very differently depending on health, job type, income, and life expectancy. A desk worker with flexible hours may see a later retirement age as annoying. A warehouse worker, home health aide, construction worker, cook, or cleaner may hear it as a demand to keep grinding through pain. That is part of the hidden inequality inside the debate. A change that looks equal on paper may not feel equal in real bodies. Longer life expectancy across the population does not mean every worker gets the same extra healthy years. Then comes the cost of living adjustment. Social Security benefits generally rise each year when the official inflation measure used for the program rises. For 2026, benefits received a 2.8% increase. A grocery bill can turn policy language into a personal insult when every substitute still costs more than memory says it should. That adjustment is important. Without it, inflation would eat benefits even faster. But many seniors still feel like the increase arrives after prices have already moved and does not fully match the items that dominate their lives. This is where the grocery aisle becomes part of the Social Security story. A retiree does not experience inflation as a national average. They experience it as eggs, bread, medicine, insurance, rent, gas, and the bill at the register. Official inflation language can sound calm. The shopping cart does not. The cart says the package got smaller, the sale requires an app, the old coupon vanished, and the cheaper option is suddenly on the bottom shelf. Grocery pricing is a maze for people on fixed income. Unit prices matter, but many shoppers are rushing, tired, or comparing packages that changed size. A box can look familiar while quietly holding less. That does not have to be illegal to be painful. Packaging changes, premium versions, limited time deals, and multi-buy offers can all push people towards spending more than they planned. Store layouts also matter. Essentials are often spread around the building, so shoppers pass snacks, prepared foods, seasonal displays, and impulse items. The longer you walk, the more chances the store has to change your list. Loyalty cards create another layer. The shelf may show a low price, but the low price might require membership, an app, a digital coupon, or personal data. The shopper without the right setup pays more. For a younger person with a phone, time, and patience, that may be annoying. For an older person without easy app access, poor eyesight, limited mobility, or no printer, the discount system can feel like a locked door. Private labels can help because store brands are often cheaper than national brands. But even there, shoppers have to compare size, ingredients, quality, and price per ounce. Saving money becomes work. Delivery apps add convenience, and convenience can be a lifeline for people who cannot drive. But fees, tips, price differences, substitutions, and service charges can make the final bill much higher than expected. This is why a Social Security check can rise and still feel smaller. The official check went up. The lived check went down. That gap between the official number and the kitchen table is where anger grows. Premium products create another quiet pressure. A basic item gets surrounded by organic, protein, family size, heart healthy, ready to eat, and limited edition versions. More choice can mean more confusion, not more power. Convenience habits also cost money. Pre-cut fruit, prepared meals, single-serve packs, and smaller shopping trips can help people with time, health, or transportation problems. But they often raise the price per meal. None of this means shoppers are foolish. It means modern pricing is complicated, and fixed income makes every complication sharper. When your monthly check is limited, confusion itself becomes expensive. Now imagine living on a Social Security benefit while rent rises, insurance rises, groceries feel slippery, and medical costs keep showing up in pieces. That is why the solvency debate is not abstract. The average retired worker benefit after the 2026 adjustment is a little over $2,000 a month. Some receive more, many receive less. Either way, it is not a luxury budget in many parts of the country. The program's strength is exactly why the financing problem matters. People trust it because they have to. For millions of older Americans, Social Security is the foundation, not a bonus, not vacation money, the foundation. If the foundation cracks, everything above it shakes. And the system also protects families before retirement. Survivor benefits can help children and spouses after a worker dies. Disability benefits can support workers who can no longer work under Social Security's rules. That wider role gets lost when people talk as if Social Security is only a retirement check. It is also family insurance. It is disability protection. It is a promise tied to work, payroll taxes, and social stability. So what exactly is the trust fund? It is not a pile of cash sitting in a warehouse. It holds special Treasury securities backed by the federal government. When Social Security runs deficits, those securities are redeemed to pay benefits. Some people call that fake money. That is misleading. Treasury securities are obligations of the government. But it is also misleading to pretend redemption has no budget pressure. The money still has to come from somewhere. This is where the national budget and Social Security politics collide. Social Security has dedicated financing, but once reserves are drawn down, paying every scheduled benefit would require changes in law or new money from elsewhere. Current law does not allow the program to keep paying full scheduled benefits after the reserves are depleted if dedicated revenue is insufficient. That is why the depletion date matters. It is not the day the program dies. It is the day the legal and financial squeeze becomes immediate. Incoming taxes would still arrive, but scheduled benefits would exceed what the system can pay. That distinction matters because fear sells. Some voices use the depletion date to make people think they will get nothing. That is wrong. Other voices use ongoing revenue to suggest there is no serious problem. That is also wrong. The honest message is less viral, but more useful. Social Security is durable, popular, and still collecting revenue. It is also underfunded for its scheduled promises, and delay makes the choices harder. One possible fix is more revenue. That can mean a higher payroll tax rate, a broader taxable wage base, more taxation of benefits for higher income retirees, or some transfer from general federal revenue. Another possible fix is slower benefit growth. That can mean changing the formula for future benefits, changing cost of living adjustments, adjusting benefits for higher earners, or raising the retirement age. A serious reform should be judged not only by whether it balances the books, but by whether people can actually live under it. A third path is a mix. Historically, big Social Security fixes have often involved compromise, because the whole is too politically sensitive for one side of the ledger to carry alone. The problem is that compromise has become a dirty word in the very place where math demands it. Everyone wants to protect the program. Fewer want to accept the price of protection. For younger workers, the issue feels different. Many doubt the system will be there for them. They see payroll taxes coming out of every paycheck while hearing that the trust fund is running down. That skepticism is understandable, but it can also become dangerous. If young workers believe the program is hopeless, they may stop demanding responsible repairs and start accepting political theater. Social Security can still pay benefits for future generations. The question is, what level of benefits, funded by what taxes, under what rules? That is not hopeless. It is a design problem. But it is a design problem with human stakes. A spreadsheet can say benefit reduction. A household says groceries, rent, medicine, grandchild, car repair, winter heating, and one more month of dignity. This is why the word entitlement gets twisted. Social Security benefits are earned through covered work and contributions under law. People plan around them because the system tells them to. At the same time, scheduled benefits are not magic. A promise without financing becomes a conflict between law, math, and politics. The longer that conflict is ignored, the uglier it gets. Some people say fraud is the answer. Fraud should be fought, errors should be fixed. Waste should be reduced. But program integrity alone is not large enough to solve the long-term financing gap. That matters because blaming fraud can become a way to avoid the bigger conversation. It is easier to say someone else is cheating than to admit the system needs a real financing decision. When one side talks only about compassion and the other talks only about cost, the public gets heat instead of clarity, and clarity is what lets families prepare. Another popular line is that politicians stole the money. The reality is more complicated. Trust fund reserves are invested in Treasury securities, and the government is obligated to redeem them. That does not mean voters should be relaxed. It means the real issue is not a cartoon robbery. The real issue is that scheduled future benefits are larger than the dedicated income projected under current rules. Then there is immigration. More workers paying payroll taxes can help the worker to beneficiary balance. But immigration alone is not a simple switch that solves every long-term funding pressure. Then there is productivity and wages. If wages grow strongly and more workers are covered by payroll taxes, the system receives more income. But relying on optimistic growth is not a plan by itself. Then there is fertility. More births eventually mean more workers, but eventually is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Babies do not become payroll taxpayers tomorrow morning. That is what makes Social Security hard. Every lever has time lag, trade-off, or distributional pain. A serious person can support different solutions. An unserious person pretends there is no cost. Now look at retirees already receiving checks. Many fear that any reform means immediate cuts. That fear is powerful, and politicians know it. Most proposals try to protect current beneficiaries or phase changes gradually. But waiting too long makes gradual protection harder. If leaders act early, changes can be spread across time. If they act near the deadline, the adjustment can feel more sudden and more unfair. This is the cruel part of procrastination. It pretends to protect people today by increasing the chance of harsher choices tomorrow. Delay wears a friendly face while it narrows the exit. The public conversation also misses household reality. Many older people are not trying to beat the market or live lavishly. They are trying to keep the lights on without becoming a burden to their children. And many adult children are already stretched. They are paying rent, student loans, car loans, childcare, health insurance, groceries, and payroll taxes. If their parents' benefits shrink, the pressure does not disappear. It moves into family budgets. A smaller Social Security check can become a daughter covering prescriptions, a son helping with rent, a grandchild moving bedrooms, or a family postponing its own savings. That is why Social Security is not only an older person issue. It is a family issue. It is a labor issue. It is a housing issue. It is a healthcare issue. It is a political trust issue. Trust is the fragile asset here. Workers trust that contributions mean something. Retirees trust that checks will arrive. Families trust that death, disability, and old age will not throw them completely over a cliff. When leaders avoid the problem, they spend that trust. Not all at once. A little every year. A confusing statement here, a delayed report there, a campaign promise with no math attached. Eventually, people stop believing the official language. They hear solvent until a certain year and wonder what happens after. They hear no cuts and wonder who pays. They hear protect and wonder for whom. The truth is that protecting Social Security may require protecting it from slogans on both sides. It cannot be saved by denial, and it should not be destroyed by panic. One uncomfortable fact is that benefit cuts can happen without anyone voting for a normal cut. If the trust fund runs out and dedicated revenue is short, current law forces a reduction in payable benefits. That is why doing nothing is not neutral. Doing nothing is a decision to let the automatic outcome approach. The automatic outcome may be politically easier to blame on math, but people will still feel it. Another uncomfortable fact is that tax increases are not painless. A higher payroll tax affects take-home pay. For lower and middle-income workers already stretched, even small changes can matter. Broadening the tax base toward higher earnings may be more popular, but it still raises design questions. How high should the cap go? Should there be a gap and then a tax above it? Should benefits change too? Changing benefits for higher earners may sound simple until you define higher earner. Lifetime earnings are not the same as current wealth. A person can have strong wages for a period and still face a fragile retirement. Changing the cost of living formula is also controversial. A slightly lower annual adjustment sounds small in year one. Over a long retirement, small differences can compound into a much smaller check. This is why details matter. A plan can sound generous in a speech and still shift pain onto people with the least room to absorb it. Using a more generous inflation measure for older Americans could better reflect medical and housing pressure, but it would cost more. Again, the moral question and the math question meet in the same room. Raising the retirement age is often described as living longer, working longer. But that phrase hides the difference between lifespan and work capacity. Not everyone gets extra years they can sell in the labor market. Means testing is another idea. It asks why wealthy retirees should receive full benefits. But strong means testing could change Social Security's identity from earned social insurance into something closer to welfare. The missing word is trade-off. That could weaken political support over time. Universal or near-universal programs often survive because many people feel invested in them. Narrow programs can become easier targets. Borrowing is another possibility. The federal government could use general revenue to fill part of the gap, but that shifts pressure into the broader budget, where debt, interest, defense, healthcare, and taxes already compete. There is no painless button. That is the adult sentence in this debate. The question is not whether pain exists. The question is who feels it, when they feel it, and whether the result is fair. Fairness depends on what you value. Protect the poorest retirees first. Protect people near retirement. Ask more from high earners. Keep benefits predictable. Avoid crushing workers. Preserve disability and survivor protection. Those goals can conflict. The serious work is deciding the balance, not pretending every promise can be maximized at once. Now return to the grocery store, because that is where policy becomes personal. A retiree does not experience Congress as a committee hearing. They experience it as whether the cart can include meat this week. They experience it as whether the cheaper medicine is enough, whether the dentist can wait, whether the thermostat can stay lower, whether the grandchild gets a birthday gift. When packaging shrinks, the official price may look stable, but the value falls. When a coupon moves into an app, the discount may exist, but not for the person who cannot access it easily. When store brands rise in price too, the old escape route narrows. When a delivery order adds fees, the person who cannot drive pays a penalty for needing help. This is the emotional core of the Social Security problem. The check is already being asked to do too much. Then Washington debates whether the future check should be smaller, later, or more expensive to fund. The gap between economic averages and human pressure creates resentment. People hear the economy is strong, but their receipt says careful. They hear inflation cooled, but the total still feels high. Inflation slowing does not mean prices go back down. It usually means prices are rising more slowly. For someone on fixed income, that distinction can feel like word games. A cost of living adjustment can help with rising prices, but it does not erase years of higher price levels. It also does not fix rent shortages, health costs, debt, or family emergencies. That is why many retirees feel like they are falling behind even when their benefit rises. They are not imagining the pressure. They are living through the difference between an index and a life. Still, accuracy matters. Saying Social Security is already gone is wrong. Saying nobody will receive benefits is wrong. Saying the program can be fixed with one tiny cleanup is also wrong. The credible position is more demanding. Social Security is essential, underfunded for scheduled promises, repairable, and politically avoided because every real repair creates winners, losers, or both. So what should ordinary viewers do with this information? First, stop treating Social Security as someone else's issue. If you work, you are paying in. If you have parents, you are exposed. If you plan to age, you are involved. Second, check your own estimated benefit. Do not build your retirement expectations on rumor. Your earnings record matters, and errors are easier to question when you look earlier rather than later. Third, Understand claiming age before the pressure hits. Claiming early can make sense for many people, especially because of health, job loss, or family need. But it permanently changes the monthly check. Fourth, plan with humility. Social Security is likely to be there in some form, but the rules and taxes may change. A plan that assumes perfection from Washington is not really a plan. Fifth, pay attention to proposals, not just promises. When a politician says, protect Social Security, ask how. With what revenue? With what benefit changes? Starting when? Affecting whom? The answer may not fit on a bumper sticker. That is the point. A vague promise is not protection. A detailed plan can be debated, scored, improved, rejected, or supported. Also watch for language tricks. Insolvent does not mean zero benefits. Trust fund depletion does not mean the program disappears. But payable benefits below scheduled benefits is still a serious cut. Watch for another trick, using averages to erase pain. The average benefit, average inflation rate, and average life expectancy can all hide the people most exposed to hardship. An average retiree is not a person. Averages do not have arthritis. Averages do not live alone. Averages do not choose between a car repair and a dental bill. Good policy has to see the averages and the people behind them. Ignore the averages and you get fantasy. Ignore the people and you get cruelty. Social Security also forces America to answer a deeper question. What do workers owe retirees? What do high earners owe the system? What does the system owe people who spend a lifetime in low-wage work? And what do leaders owe voters? Not comfort? Not panic? The truth, early enough that the truth can still be acted on without breaking people. There is still time to repair the system. That is important. The clock is not at midnight. But the clock is close enough that pretending not to hear it is its own kind of decision. The solution does not have to be one dramatic move. It can be a phased package. More revenue here, benefit protection there, gradual changes, stronger minimum protections, clearer rules, less political theater. The repair does not need to punish one generation to rescue another. It needs to be honest about what each generation can reasonably carry. But the package has to exist. Speeches do not fund benefits. Outrage does not close actuarial gaps. Viral clips do not replace legislation. The reason this conversation feels so tense is that Social Security is one of the few institutions Americans still expect to show up every month. When everything else feels unstable, that monthly deposit becomes emotional. It represents work already done, taxes already paid, parents cared for, spouses buried, bodies worn down, years spent doing jobs that kept the country moving. So when people hear possible cuts, they do not hear a budget adjustment. They hear a broken deal. And when younger workers hear higher taxes, they do not hear solidarity automatically. They hear another bite from a paycheck already bleeding. Both reactions are human. That is why leadership matters. A country cannot solve a shared problem by telling every group only what it wants to hear. The cleanest lie in politics is that someone else can pay for everything. The second cleanest lie is that the pain is unavoidable, so fairness does not matter. Both are excuses. A better conversation starts with facts. The program is not bankrupt. The trust funds are projected to be depleted if nothing changes. Incoming revenue would still pay most benefits. Full scheduled benefits need action. Then it asks values. Should the lowest income retirees be protected first? Should high earners contribute more? Should younger workers carry more tax? Should future benefits grow more slowly for people with higher lifetime earnings? Then it asks timing. Should changes begin soon and phase in gradually? Or should America wait until a deadline forces rush decisions? That may be the most important question of all. Because time is the one resource Congress keeps spending without a vote. Every year of delay uses up room for gradualism. Every year of delay makes the next promise more expensive. For a viewer in their 20s, this is about the kind of old age they may inherit. For a viewer in their 50s, it is about whether plans made over decades still hold. For retirees, it is about survival with dignity. For families, it is about whether one generation's insecurity becomes another generation's emergency. A cut does not stay inside one mailbox. It travels through kitchens, phone calls, spare bedrooms, and unpaid bills. That is why the Social Security problem nobody wants to talk about is not just money. It is trust. It is fairness. It is whether a country can admit a predictable problem before it becomes a forced crisis. The grocery receipt, the rent notice, the prescription counter, and the payroll tax line on a paycheck are all connected. They are where national policy touches ordinary life. People are tired of being told the numbers are fine when their budget says otherwise. They are also tired of being frightened by claims that skip the facts. They deserve a conversation that is honest enough to be useful. Pretending otherwise makes the final decision more painful for households. That means rejecting two fantasies. The first fantasy is that Social Security will vanish completely, so nothing matters. The second fantasy is that Social Security can keep every scheduled promise forever, without anyone paying more or receiving less. The real path is harder but better. Admit the gap, protect the most vulnerable. Phase changes in. Spread the burden. Stop pretending delay is compassion. And remember the human side. Behind every benefit check is a person who once worked, paid taxes, raised children, cared for family, served customers, drove trucks, cleaned rooms, taught classes, repaired roads, or answered phones. Behind every payroll tax is a worker trying to build a future while funding the present. The system depends on both sides believing the deal is fair enough to continue. If that belief breaks, the damage will be larger than any one monthly check. It will become another reason Americans feel the country asks for sacrifice but cannot keep promises. So the question is not whether Social Security matters. It clearly does. The question is whether leaders will protect it while there is still time to do it carefully. And the question for the rest of us is whether we will reward honesty or punish it. Because a politician who tells the truth about Social Security will almost always sound less comforting than one selling denial. Comfort is not the same as protection. Protection requires numbers, timelines, trade-offs, and the courage to tell voters that a beloved program still needs maintenance. That may sound boring compared with outrage, but boring maintenance is how bridges stay open. It is how homes stay standing. It is how promises survive long enough to matter. Social Security is not perfect. It can be confusing, underfunded, and politically exploited. It can also be one of the strongest anti-poverty and family security tools the country has ever built. The sooner the repair starts, the more humane it can be. The later it starts, the more people will be told there were no better options, even though the better option was time. So when someone says Social Security is too complicated to understand, do not accept that. The basic story is simple. More is scheduled to go out than current rules bring in, and the difference has to be closed. The only question is whether America closes it deliberately or lets the deadline close it for us. If this video helped make the issue clearer, like the video, share it with someone who thinks Social Security is either perfectly safe or already gone, and comment with this question: what fix do you think is fairest for workers and retirees?